Okay, it is 12:05, and it looks like it'll just be the two of us. So we can go ahead and get started. Um, are you there?
Yes, I'm still here. You
Okay,
can't. Sorry.
okay. That's okay. So we can go ahead and introduce ourselves again. Pronouns, name, and then our icebreaker question. I will go first. My name is Jonathan. My pronouns are he, him. And our icebreaker for today will be, would you rather have the ability to speak all human languages or only speak to animals? Um, I would definitely say animals. I thought about the question. I'm sorry, I would say all human languages. Originally, my answer was animals, but I realized that I do eat meat, so I don't think I would be the best person to talk to animals. I would probably immediately go vegan. So, all human languages for sure. What about you?
Uh, my name's Michael. He, him pronouns. I think I would also go for um, the all languages. I
Hmm.
don't know. I may feel a little isolated if I couldn't talk to any other people.
People.
Definitely would feel like that, last of your kind of feeling.
Yeah.
Plus, it would just be really nice to be able to like go other places and be able to communicate and not be
Hmm. Hmm.
beholden to American
Hmm.
English all the time.
True. Okay. So we can jump into our book talk. I guess I'll ask you how you felt about the whole book.
I liked it. I kind of wish it was longer. There are a lot more things that
Hmm.
like dig into or hear more about. But for the most part, I really enjoyed it. I very much am into like the kind of like fantasy or like sci-fi aspect of it,
Hmm.
and that paired with the themes of the book and this sort of like generational trauma thing that I think of a lot when thinking about the people, the Wujinryu, and I don't know, especially during Black History Month, it was a good read. But yes, I liked it. I enjoyed it. I want more.
That's good. Yeah, I totally agree. Originally, I think I believed I would like it, but I didn't realize I would like it as much as I did. I guess, unlike you, I'm not someone who gravitates towards fantasy at all. I tend to stick to like reality-based books. But this book really sucked me in. Though originally, when I first opened it, I thought I probably wasn't going to be able to finish it simply because the language and the writing style that I guess I just keep using the word poetic for it to describe it. It felt a bit overwhelming to me. And I listened to the audiobook, and usually when I listen to audiobooks, I'm doing other things. And I quickly realized that this audiobook is one that like you have to really sit down and like focus your whole attention on, or else you will miss things. Because for the first few chapters, I had to keep going back and like re-listening to it to make sure I didn't miss anything important. But I really enjoyed it. I'm very glad I read it, especially like you said during Black History Month. I'm curious how you felt. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Oh, I didn't say anything yet. I just
Oh, okay. I'm curious how you felt about Yatu's character, our main character for the story.
uh, a, a lot of different things. The opening
Hmm.
scene was a lot more intense, and I don't think I caught at first what really was like happening in that opening scene until
Yeah.
later in the
Hmm.
book when they talked about it, and I went back and listened to it again. I was like, oh, this is like,
Hmm.
I wish I would have caught this at the beginning because it made things a little bit more, a little more intense or a little heavier listening to some of those beginning parts. But I don't, I want to sympathize with a lot of, um, I'm going to say her. I don't know that she was ever like gendered in the book, but I just assumed female the whole time for whatever reason. Or they're not gendered, right? They
Yeah, I believe it's mentioned towards the end, but I know in the afterword of the book. Did you get to the afterword of the book?
I did.
You did. Okay, good. I know in that part of the book, David Diggs, I guess, speaks in part for his rap group Clippings, but also in part for Rivers. And I guess collaboratively, they all agreed that they're not going to use any singular pronouns, um, only group pronouns. So primarily saying they or them, even when talking about one person, regardless of their gender or identity.
Okay, good. Thank you for
Mhm.
reminding me of that. No, I don't know. A lot of this is like burden that they have
Mhm.
to carry is really, I mean, it's really intense, and
Mhm.
it's really easy to see like why do I have to be this person? Why do I have to hold like all of my people's history and trauma, and no one else does? That can be enough to like really do really strange and unusual things, which we of course see a lot of from Yetu. But again, like all things that I think I understand things like the running away and the
Mhm.
scene at the beginning. There is reason behind it all.
Mhm.
Um, I'm curious. Did you think that any of their actions were like really selfish or narcissistic?
That's an interesting point. That's actually in my notes. I wanted to ask you about that. I guess first I'll say that I I don't know if I would say I liked Yetu, but I also don't believe I found her particularly unlikable. I felt that she was kind of like a blank canvas in a lot of ways. She just kind of existed to take everyone else's trauma, and it didn't seem like she had much of a personality herself until she went on land and got stuck and met Ori. Um, but in regards to her actions, I, I don't. It's difficult. I think there's really no right or wrong, I guess, answer to what she did by leaving the Wajanru tribe with the memories for the few days that she left for. Um, because I could imagine someone in her shoes being tired of being the sole historian and carrying all that burden and all that weight, especially since she was, I guess, pushed to the brink of a suicide attempt. I could imagine that. I can imagine how stressed out she would be. But I also don't know if I agree with letting everyone else be as stressed, especially because they're not trained to handle it the way that they, speaking about Yetu, the way that they um, were. I don't know. Do you define that as being selfish?
Um, I'm not. I'm not really sure.
Hmm.
Uh, I think I'm kind of torn
Hmm.
because like at some level, I think it's really selfish of the of the tribe, of the culture, to
Hmm.
hold this one person responsible for all of that. It's essentially like, I mean, I won't say a death sentence, but like
Hmm.
it seems like the least fun thing that you can do. Like constant torture.
Hmm.
Um, and like there is of course some like nobility in that level of sacrifice, but when you don't get to make that choice,
Hmm.
I don't know that I would think of trying to escape from it as selfish, but at the same time, like knowing the impact it has on everyone else, I was really torn trying to think like, is this selfish or selfless or needed for like self awareness?
Hmm.
And it was just that was a little hard for me to I don't know to work through on how I thought about some of those. Well, not some of those actions, specifically the action of running away and leaving everyone arriving in pain at the bottom of the sea.
Yeah, that whole dilemma reminds me of that like classic trolley. What is it? Trolley.
the
like
trolley.
trolley dilemma, like save one or save five. You know. Um, what was I about to say? Give me just a moment. I'm sorry. Oh, I wanted to bring up the fact I'm not neurodivergent myself, but I have seen reviews from people who are neurodivergent, and they've said that it seems as if the role of the historian can only be bestowed upon neurodivergent Wajenru tribe members because it really boils down to the historian's brain has to work differently than the average Wajenru's brain would work. Uh, and going back and I guess having the context of what I know about being neurodivergent, I guess in this case we're talking about autism. I would say that Yetu is sort of autistic coded. Would you agree with that? Or do you have any context of autism at all?
Um, I kind of think so. Um, my professional background is in special ed, so I have
Oh, okay.
some level
Nice.
of contact there. But I don't necessarily know that I agree with the assumption that any historian has to be that way, as much as like there being some sort of just like shift from taking on that burden. Because how old was Yetu when she was selected?
She was 14 and she's been doing it for 20 years, so she's now 34. But she was chosen when she was 14.
I don't know. I do feel quite a bit that like maybe there is a little bit of that she is like autism coded, but
Mm-hmm.
some of that too I don't like. I especially think of like the scenes when she's in the tidal pool, or a lot of these like sensory things,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
and I don't know if that is as much like a just like a part of the role, or if
Mm-hmm.
it seems intentional. But I know that of course, where everyone's going to put what they want into it. But as I'm thinking now back to, especially when the people are talking to her and she's like, oh, I can like feel every vibration of every one of their scales like shooting towards me. I'm like, oh, that is definitely like
Sensory.
definitely a sensory.
And I'm also curious, with the role of the historian, like, do you think, I know we kind of already discussed whether or not it's fair, but what do you think that says about the Wajenru's history or their culture? And did you notice how it perhaps being a historian and having to carry all the memories for everyone else, do you believe that that leads to a weakening in relationships and weakenings in bonds?
Um, I definitely think that it. I don't know if it if I would say weakening, but it definitely diminishes like the potential strength of bonds among
Mm-hmm.
people in the tribe when they don't understand their own history or generational trauma. And it made me, the whole role of the historian made me, it made me think of a lot of different things, especially there's so many cultures with like a very rich like oral storytelling history, and
Mm-hmm.
a lot of times that being placed on like one person, which I know is not quite the same because everyone hears the stories all the time, but so like one person having to be responsible for keeping all of that, and then at some level getting to determine how that history is interpreted or delivered. And the same thing happens here. Like it seems like Netu can, I don't want to say pick and choose, but if she wants to like not they want to not like put specific memories out during their memory, and then they don't have to. They can, it seems like they have complete control, especially at this point after doing it for 20 years, of how the memories are delivered and like which ones come and go in the order they come in. So that was an interesting like connection that I thought of. But like as a whole, going back to your real question of like what do I think about the like Wajenru culture society as a result of
Mm-hmm.
having a historian role.
Mm-hmm.
Um, I'm not I'm not sure, because I know that there is, especially with any like really like heavily oppressed peoples, there is a lot of wanting to avoid that trauma, or knowing that it is like passed down, like even genetically, whether or not you want it to be, and that maybe this is a survival tactic. Maybe they didn't think they could survive, like knowing the great the great sadness and tragedy that they're born of, or not being able to focus on the other parts of their existence, because they're literally like born of death. It's not like a a fun thing to remember that that's what you're based on, especially like when everything around you is alive. But I don't know. I mean, I want to sympathize with it, but at the same time, it feels so unfair to do that to someone.
Yeah. I think the role of a historian, I don't know if I would say is necessarily bad. I do believe amongst the Wajanru tribe that it was started with good intentions. I could imagine that when the tribe was a lot smaller, the idea of one person carrying around everyone's memories, but everyone's negative memories, that is, and also their history didn't seem as daunting. But as their tribe grew, and as, of course, people experienced more pain, I mean, we all experience pain daily in some way or another, it became way too overwhelming. And like you said earlier, I do believe that the historian should have a choice instead of just being chosen by the previous historian, which is what happened with Yetu. Because while she may have the ability to control what she's seeing, and I guess have some control over her powers, I do see us being able to see that she's now sort of lost that control. She has the difficulty telling when she's in a memory or when it's reality, and that's led to her death, her near death, I should say, their near death, in more than one instance, which is, I think, the opening chapter is one of those instances as well. Yeah, it's hard to say. I mean, I guess the whole point of the book is it's not meant to be totally black and white. There's going to be some sort of moral ambiguity. But this one, I say, definitely teeters the line without giving too much of a clear it's good or it's bad, if you know what I mean.
Yes. Yeah, I see that a lot.
Mm-hmm.
I agree with it.
And the story like initially reminded me a lot of Eternal Sunshine for a Spotless Mind. Have you seen that film?
I haven't. I don't really watch a lot of movies, so most
That's okay. Well, I guess I'll give you a little bit of like a brief synopsis. Like, so it relates in the sense that Eternal Sunshine for a Spotless Mind takes place in a world where there is a clinic that you can go to for your mental health, and you can ask a psychiatrist to remove certain traumatic memories or people out of your life, and you can go on about your life without ever remembering anything to do with them. And this relates to this book for me because it's almost like that is what the whole Rajanru tribe chooses to do. Have all of their bad memories removed so they can live on happily without depression or suicidal ideation, things like that, but in turn, that gives all of those feelings to Yetu. Does that connection make sense to you?
It does, and it definitely. I mean, it makes me think of seeing that theme. I couldn't name specific stories from it, but it's definitely something that I've seen in other books or media, that I see. I see that reflected here too. That it is definitely like a choice to just not remember the things that you don't want to remember.
I'm glad you said that, 'cause that's a great segue to my next question. Do you believe that some trauma is too painful to remember, or that we should have a right to no longer remember them?
I
Yeah, it's a hard question, I know.
It is. So I know that sometimes there are things that happen to people that get blocked out, and
Hmm.
they don't have like cognizant memories of, but you still have some sort of like sense memory of those things happening.
Hmm.
Um, we see this or hear about it a lot with all kind of trauma victims,
Hmm.
but that you just in general, you don't become who you are without having like work through those things. And like, yes, some people have a lot more thrown at them to work through than others. But
Hmm.
sometimes some people have essentially none. But you know i I think it's important to be able to not hold on to it for painful memory, but hold on to it for the growth that comes from it. But I don't know, I mean, we already block things out
Hmm.
subconsciously sometimes, so I would say some things maybe, but you still need to, I don't want to say have a sense of what happened, but you know, asking too many hard questions today.
I know. This book is just full of like moral dilemmas, and like even when I was reading, I couldn't figure out what I would do as a character. So, and neither can you, and that's okay. um, yeah, I agree. I guess I do believe that some memories can be too traumatic. I mean, in the real world, we do see people, you know, use substance abuse to cope with their pain. We do see people attempt to take their own lives or participate in some way in self-harm to cope with the memories. But I don't know if I would say that it would be beneficial for us to forget our trauma because, as I guess as cliche as it sounds, I do believe all of our experiences, both good and bad, contribute to who we are as people, and they're the foundation of who we are, and we need those foundations to keep being ourselves and be our most authentic selves. And I would worry for myself as much as for other people, who would we become if we didn't have those foundations? You know?
I agree with that.
Yeah. Mhm. I have a lot of notes. I'm just scrolling through. Sorry. um,
Do you, I have a question or something that
yeah, sure.
I was curious about. I don't know that we get names for a lot of the characters.
Mm,
Um, it actually seems like we only get specific names, at least for general characters, for the
mm,
historians. Did
mm.
you pick up on that, or did you, or were there names mentioned that I just didn't notice?
There were obviously some background characters that we didn't get names for, but I did pick up on quite a few names. But I guess to be fair, I do take notes while I'm reading. So like I like take character notes and characters' names. So I may have caught them when you couldn't. But we have Yetu, who is of course our main character. We have Amaba, who is Yetu's mother. And from my understanding, Amaba is not her actual name. It is a title that Wajanrus give their mothers. I could be wrong, but I did see
That
several other characters calling someone Amaba. So,
that was my understanding too, and that's kind of what I was trying to, or more what I was thinking to lead into, is if there is a lot
mhm,
of reference just by relationship or title,
mhm,
unless you're like this story, but maybe not. Maybe I just didn't catch some of the other names. But the I did find the Amaba, uh, the use of it kind of interesting. But I guess we do
mhm.
the same thing. Like I don't. I mean, I know some people that call their parents by their first names, but not. I would not be allowed to call my parents by my first
Yeah,
name. So.
not to their face, yeah. um, and I'm glad that you picked up on the name, I should say the title Amaba, because a lot of people said that one of the strongest themes in the book is motherhood. I didn't really pick up on that. Did you?
I don't know if I would have thought of it as one of the strongest themes, but I do think we get a lot of scenes of Yetu being mothered by Amaba, but I just assumed that was like because of their roles. That's why it came through, and not that it was necessarily like a really distinct separate theme. But there is a really intentional level of care, and also sort of this. I just imagine like what it must be to be like the Amaba of the historian, and having to do things like, you know, pull your child out of like bloody shark infested waters, or like prepare them for this like really intense reading ritual all the time, or know that they are walking around holding all these things that you like. I feel like the Amaba has to agree at some level. Do we know if that's true, that they like, was there some sort of like permission, or were they just like, yeah, 2 year end, Amaba was like, okay, cool?
From what it seems, I could be wrong. I finished the book a few weeks ago, so I may have forgotten a few things. But from what I remember, there's no really parental permission given. I guess it's looked at as being more of an honor to be chosen than like a task or a chore. So you don't really deny it. But there are certain moments where it appears that Yetu's Amaba is not comfortable with Yetu being the historian. The most prevalent memory for me would be when they're preparing Yetu for the remembering ceremony, and Amaba is very angry at the ways in which Yetu is being treated. And I think it's because she knows how fragile Yetu is, and they can all agree a fragile person is not the kind of person who should be a historian. So in some way, I do believe that Amaba would not have wanted Yetu to be the historian.
Mm-hmm. Do you pick up on mothering in any other parts of the story? I think there's really only one that comes to mind for me, like really where it really specifically pops out. But I'm curious if there are others for you, like outside of the Yetu and Amaba relationship.
Originally, there weren't, but once I read that review that kind of harped on the theme of motherhood in this book, I went back and kind of recontextualized some things. I would argue that the way in which Ori and Suka, Ori being Yetu's love interest, and then Suka being the woman who originally brought Yetu food, they mother her in a lot of ways. They acclimate Yetu to their way of life, things they eat, the way they breathe, the way they speak, the way they bathe themselves. Especially Ori towards the end, like she is kind of the mother figure to Yetu, I believe. Which is why I believe Yetu became so enamored with her in the first place, because she is that sort of mother figure that you follow behind. Do you agree with that?
I do agree with that. That's interesting, because I don't think I really, like, there obviously is a really high level of care, especially for, you know, a strange, potentially dangerous creature that you know, both Suka and Ori are not afraid of. They really do. They're very, very gentle with Yetu sometimes, and very, very patient. And really, really, like, they do spoil her, because at one point they're like, you don't need to be here. Like, you could have swam away like weeks ago. Just like hanging out in this kiddie pool. But the other place for me that really, where I sort of see that theme of motherhood, was the, you know, specifically like there was a scene where I think it's in part of the remembering, where Yetu is understanding that like the whales are really caring for these like firstborn Wojenru, and it's sort of like the idea of not even specifically the whales, but like kind of like the sea or nature mothering, a
Hmm.
lost people
Hmm.
definitely stuck out to me. But I don't know. Do you see that too? Looking back on those
Oh,
instances.
totally. Yes. I would say that like the ocean and the I can't remember the whale's name, but they do mention there being a extremely old whale. I think both those characters, the ocean and the old whale, are like the supreme mothers to all Wajinru. And I also believe that the term Wajinru is another concept of mothering because they chose to name themselves after Waj, who was the two-legged woman that they saved, and who, in their mind, also saved them and gave them a name and taught them a language, things like that. Yeah, just go through my notes. Oh, there's a quote I have, but I'm curious if you think it relates to the character's moral dilemma at all. It's a quote from George Stanayana. Those who cannot remember the past are condemned to repeat it. Do you think that applies to this story?
Uh, Maybe. I mean, I'm trying to think in the context of more specifically the
Mm-hmm.
Wajenru like don't have these memories, or don't have them all the time rather.
Mm-hmm.
um, and I guess they probably are doomed to repeat things that have happened in the past, or that their four parents have like already learned their lessons from,
Mm-hmm.
especially if they don't have like any specific like sense of self or direction, which to me it seems like they don't. I could be off a little bit there, but it seems almost they kind of just like get up every day and they're like, oh, like just like swim around and do whatever, and like
Mm-hmm.
free of all burdens. I like run into one, but yeah, I think it really does doom them to sort of um, repeat, and it makes me wonder too. Like I don't think we get any sense of any previous historians like acting. I'll say acting out the way that Yetu has, and it makes me wonder. Like, have there been instances with other historians that maybe are like taken out of the remembering, that
Hmm.
they're just like not cognizant of, and they like keep
Mm-hmm.
maybe keep repeating the same cycle sometimes.
Hmm. That's interesting. Wow. I don't know either. That's a really cool thought, though. Thank you. I would say that I think the quote I think it rings very true for the story. I feel that the entire concept of the Wajanru all being equals, that comes from them understanding the danger of trying to establish some sort of like social hierarchy. I guess for us, it would be like racial discrimination. For them, it would be like two leg versus Wajinru. But um, so I think if they didn't have the memories of the the damage trying to establish a hierarchy can cause, then they possibly wouldn't be able to be as free and equal under the ocean as they are now. Um, so yeah, I would say yeah, like they need the memories to me.
Yeah, I agree with that.
There's a quote in the book that stood out to me, and I'm curious what you think of it. It's in the scene, or I should say chapter, in the chapter where Waj, the two-legged woman who the Wajinru rescued, is saying goodbye to one of the Wajinru tribe members. And the tribe member asks Waj, what is belonging? And Waj's response is, belonging is where loneliness ends. What do you think about that? I thought that was so powerful.
Um, that is really powerful, but then like I immediately think of like that in the sense of this whole structure that they've built up, and there's one person that they've doomed to loneliness all the time.
Exactly. Isn't that interesting?
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Because I mean, go ahead.
Go ahead.
I can't remember the Basha, who was the previous historian. That's his name. He says how lonely he feels because historians are not allowed to take lovers, but he is in love with someone. But he knows, and he'll never have a chance to be with his love interest, their love interest. I'm sorry, because he can't as a historian. So again, they built their community around the idea of everyone belonging everywhere. But in actuality, when you choose historians, like you've just said, they get nothing and they're almost an outcast. There becomes a sense of hierarchy of the historian versus everyone else. And that's not fair.
No, not fair at all.
Mm-hmm.
I wonder why or how many other does Basha still hold on to remembering after not being historian?
I believe so. So I think how it works is they pass on their memories, but they still, so they don't have, I guess, the whole library of memories, but they do remember their own memories of remembering, if that makes sense.
That makes sense. Okay.
Because when he starts, Basha, I should say, when Basha starts the revolution of Wajenru versus two-legged people, he has a understanding of what would have caused Yatu to run away, and he also knows he remembers just how cruel two-legged people can be. So I imagine he must remember some things, but probably not everything, because he's been related to his title.
That makes sense.
Mm-hmm. I guess my overall question for the Wajenru is, why does it have to be just one person? Why can't they take turns? Like, why one person for a whole year? That to me seems very unfair.
It does seem very unfair. Or could it be a group of people? It almost
Yeah.
feels safer to do that too.
Mm-hmm.
If there's always safety in
Mm-hmm.
numbers, but maybe that's part of the design that if there are two people, they start to question more.
Mm. Good point.
Or if everyone has to do it, then someone says, "Oh, no way, we're not all taking turns doing this. Only one person's going to do this."
Mm-hmm.
I did have a question.
Yeah.
You specifically about Waj and Suka. So there was a part where Waj calls the Zenryu, and she calls them strange fish, and then Suka uses the same specific phrase. I think it's actually like Zoti Alehu.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
But it makes me wonder, as much sort of myth that there is about the two legs, if there is some other. I mean, I know we have all of these stories of sirens and mermaids in every culture essentially, but what sort of stories may be passed down among two legs about the Regeneru, or do you think that there actually are? Do you think Waj kept that secret and that they've just really essentially stayed out of sight?
That's a great question, because that was my next question to you. um, that for me is a bit tricky. I would imagine that the two-legged people would have to have some sort of knowledge of the Wajenru, or at least the existence of like underwater life, because it kind of struck me when Suka and her family, I don't remember the family's names, but when Suka and her family originally found Yetu, they were not like super freaked out. I mean, they were freaked out because Yetu, I'm sorry, was like hissing and yelling and screaming, but they weren't scared of what Yetu was. So they must have some sort of knowledge of what they are, if that makes sense.
It does make sense. I didn't really consider that. I almost just I did notice like the I won't say level of comfort, but that they weren't immediately just
Mhm.
like kill it. But I just
Mhm.
in my mind thought that like this is maybe just a society that's like more in tune with the natural world, or like recognizes what is um, probably a very powerful creature. But maybe that's not the case. It's I'm glad to like hear that, because it definitely puts it in a different perspective for me.
Mhm. And then even when Ori comes in, Ori is not particularly freaked out by Yetu either. It's like a
Do
pretty comfortable thing.
you think Ori is freaked out by anything?
I don't know. That's funny. And I guess to go back to the neurodivergent question I asked earlier, do you believe that Ori comes off a bit more artistic coded as well?
Very much, yes.
Yeah, totally. In my mind too. Yeah.
Especially with there's like an obsession with like fishing questions, and I remember a lot of
Hmm.
scenes specifically about nets, or maybe just one, and it really stuck out to me. But just
Hmm.
so many questions about that, and I understand if that's what you're doing all day. Like you're obviously going to have like some some
Hmm.
level of interest or insight, but it really just felt like obsession, especially the way that it's described, with her just like squatting on the rock, like listening so intently to everything that you.
Yeah, I would say same. But I guess for me, I noticed it more in Ori's like bluntness. That is like I guess a signifier that someone may be neurotypical. Um, I'm sorry, neurodivergent. And that's where I noticed it. Yeah. But then I also, from what I've heard, I believe Rivers, the author, writes a lot of her characters, a lot of their characters. I'm sorry, the author's non-binary. A lot of their characters as being some sort of neurodivergent. So I won't be surprised if they're both or one of them is meant to be neurodivergent. um, there's a part of the book where Yetu says that they fear that if the tribe knew everything about their history all at once, without anyone taking it back over, that they wouldn't have the strength to carry on and possibly kill themselves. Do you agree with that? That assessment that Yetu had made?
I was a little nervous when like hearing that assessment, because I did start to think like what would happen to them, or like how do people really respond when they're like forced to
Mm-hmm.
process so much trauma all at once, and then imagine that like on the magnitude of generations and generations, and just feeling it all and not having anyone to guide you. I mean, that is like a very specific reason that people have suicidal ideations in real life. So it would make sense that it would possibly happen here too. Um,
Mm-hmm.
but I also am curious, just sort of on that same note, if there was any. I'm not thinking there was, but if there were any sort of like strong opinions or thoughts, or anything from the society as a whole on suicide, especially since the story opens with an attempted suicide. Um,
Mm-hmm.
but I don't know that we really got any like they're obviously like don't do that, but I don't know that we got
Mm-hmm.
anything more than that around their beliefs there, did we?
I don't believe so. I mean, the only thing I can think of is when Amaba catches Yetu attempting suicide. Um, Amaba is very dead set on saying you can't do this because you're a historian. It did not seem like you can't do this because it's wrong or because I love you. It was this is your job and it'll be selfish of you to kill yourself. That's the only thing I really got when we like go over in the book the concept of suicide. Did you pick up on anything else?
No, I didn't. And then, but maybe they don't have any memories. They don't have
Hmm.
any
True.
concept on it. Maybe that's why.
And that brings me back to my question about whether or not, forgetting the memories weakens relationships. When I look at Amaba's relationship with Yetu, a mother and their child, it doesn't really feel like that at all. That's why originally, when I read Amaba, I thought it was just her name because she didn't. The character was not giving me like a mothering sort of energy or vibe at all. And then even Yetu mentions like we can't be very close at all because she was never a good mother to me. But because I remember and she forgets, I pull back while she tries to give in. Um, did you pick up on that when you read that line as well?
I don't know that I picked up on it as much, but I mean, hearing it definitely puts it into perspective for me.
Mm-hmm.
But I'm wondering if there's sort of more there too, especially let's say putting like maybe a little bit of a different lens on it,
Mm-hmm.
of the relationship, especially in sometimes in Black culture between like a mother and
Mm-hmm.
a queer child,
Mm-hmm.
and sort of be like that really that similar really strained relationship, which I know is not there is no monolith. Every relationship is different,
Mm-hmm.
but so Yetu is queer in a lot of ways,
Mm-hmm.
even many different definitions of the word. So it kind of makes me think of that a little bit too.
Hmm. I didn't think of that. That's a very good point. Huh. Thank you. Where was I going to go next with that? Oh, with Ori. I guess what did you think of Ori's character as a whole?
Um, it was really nice for Yetu to meet someone that's also like one of a kind, or
Mm-hmm.
the only one of her kind.
Mm-hmm.
Um, I do love these like magical storytelling things sometimes. And we obviously wouldn't get the same thing if Ori was like Suga's sister.
Yeah.
Like from where Suga's from. I don't think we would get the same thing at all. Um, but is like a nice balance. I don't know. I was very excited for Yetu to have some sort of like positive, positive things, like more moments of like self discovery and appreciation and connection with other people, because she definitely is not getting that a lot,
Mm-hmm.
in her in her regular Wajinru life. And I think it like towards the end of the books, really sets her on a path to take a different course than she had been considering otherwise. Because I don't know if she would have gone back if all of this stuff hadn't happened.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Actually, I don't think she would have.
Mm-hmm.
It gives her like a renewed sense of purpose.
Hmm. Yeah, I agree. I mean, I think originally I didn't love Ori simply because she was a bit more, what do you call that? A bit more aloof, not the most like openly friendly person. So I guess naturally that's not a character I'm going to love. But as Ori and Yetu spent more time together, I really began to love their relationship. I thought it was so. I guess they just call that like simpatico. Like they both have what the other person needs in a lot of ways, and they balance each other out. Um, what did you? I'm curious. What did you think of Ori's story of having their island destroyed and their family destroyed?
Um, I, it's sad.
Yeah.
Um, I don't know. I thought it was what really stuck out to me there was like the fact that Ori goes back and still like tends to the
Hmm.
land and like takes care of like crates and stuff to help preserve that.
Hmm.
Even though she's the last of her kind, and like knowing that that's probably not going to continue when she's not there
Hmm.
anymore. But that like really intentional act of remembrance was, um, I don't know that I want to say like warming, but um, shows you like really what's meant to like drive Ori as a character,
Hmm.
or maybe why she's so part of why she's so separated from all the other people near her. Because I think she could have very easily probably integrated herself if she wanted to,
Hmm.
uh,
Yes.
but she like really makes that choice to be like the last the last pillar of where she's from.
Hmm.
Um, but I like trying to search for a parallel there between her and YouTube, but I definitely don't think that I have one.
Hmm. I was originally I spent so much time trying to find any like real life events that would have inspired Yetu's not Yetu, Ori's backstory. Any sort of like mass bombings that happened in the U.S. or and I can't think of any. Could you? Well, of course
Um,
there's like Mount Vesuvius and all those things like that. Mount Vesuvius. Um, but outside of that, I couldn't think of any.
no, I can't really think of any either. Do you see like Suka and Ori as existing in a specific time and place?
That's what I was going to ask you too. I definitely think it's more of a modern time. There's no technology, so it's possibly not our exact decade, but a bit more modern. Um, it wasn't clear to me if they're supposed to be near Africa or near the states where the not Africa where the slaves would have been picked up had they been thrown overboard at that point, or if they made it more towards the U.S. where the slaves arrived. Um, that wasn't clear to me. Was any of that clear to you?
It wasn't really clear either, but I definitely for some reason in my mind I imagined like some sort of like colonial or
Hmm.
like
Okay.
colonizing
Hmm.
era, but well, in colonized area, but um, which may also lead into if they are in Africa or maybe
Hmm.
the well, I don't know, the Caribbean, or that could make sense as like you know that's why
Hmm.
Ori's village has been destroyed as like part of that process.
Hmm. And what did you think of Ori and Yetu's original conflict of like Ori being upset for Yetu for wanting to forget her tribe, while Ori wants nothing but to remember hers?
Uh-huh. Um, I mean, it's definitely a good way for Yetu to sort of like reset and reframe,
Hmm.
and
Hmm.
maybe the same for Ori too. I mean, Ori is very seems like very stubborn, and
Hmm.
really closed off to a lot of
Hmm.
things. Um, but that sort of seeing that in each other and seeing like such different stories, but still having like really similar personality types and struggles as a result of that. Um,
Hmm.
I don't know, maybe opens them up or softens them or gives some more self awareness. Not just one of them, but to both of them.
Yeah, totally. I totally agree with that. I think that Yetu is determined to forget everything and to untether herself from her tribe, but she can see that in Ori how important it is to remember those things when you have nothing left because they're all gone. And I think Ori is benefiting from being able to see just how traumatic and daunting it can be in Yetu to remember everything. But it's important to let some things go, but also cherish certain memories or certain people. So I
Yeah,
think that they both equally balance each other out romantically and even platonically.
I agree. I also sort of along the same lines here. I think of Ori as really disciplined, almost like a
Hmm.
military type personality from
Hmm.
what we get in the book. Whereas I see the Regenru just as a society as complete opposite almost, with like no, I don't want to say no boundaries, but they can just, it feels like a lot of times they can just sort of like go with whatever whims, and then this like remembering is one of the only forms of
Mm-hmm.
like ritual or discipline that they really have.
Mm-hmm.
And even then, it's not like, it seems like it's not that strict, because Yetu puts it off for like what, four extra months or something like that.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Um, which I don't know how it's supposed to happen every year. That's quite a long time to be waiting for something. It's only supposed to happen once, like 3 days. But that I definitely got like some sense of that too. And I think maybe just the idea of like, with Yetu being a like, mermaid or whatever, that there's like some sense of freedom connected with like the openness and the vastness of the ocean, that also contributes to that whole, I don't want to say lack of discipline, but maybe more whimsical,
Mm-hmm. Free spirited.
yeah, free spirit of the society as a whole.
Mm-hmm.
um, but I do think that Yetu in particular, like, also really lacks that level of discipline that Ori has.
Mm-hmm. Totally. Which is again, I think why Yetu looks at Ori as being almost like a mothering figure because she has so much to learn from her. Um, so yeah, what did you think of the big argument between Yetu and Ori, where Ori asks Yetu to come with them to their island, and Yetu refuses?
Uh, I I don't know, but I tried to see it the other way too. That if Yetu was like
Mm-hmm.
back with me, like, Ori would not physically be able to.
Mm-hmm.
Like, there's no way, and that like that inherently is like a one sided request. But also like seeing the two of them as romantic interest in their, like, needing to be some level of selflessness there, for that kind of relationship. um that it was like maybe Ori's way of like testing, like, how committed, how interested, are you, like, this is something that's really important to me. I want to like open up and show you more of who I
Mm-hmm.
am and more of what drives me. And then, like, Yetu not being able to accept that. And I think maybe because she's been like trained and conditioned by her people to be like, you can't have that, don't think about it.
Mm-hmm.
So that may be a part of like why she's not able to take that offer and go with Ori.
Hmm. I think I disagree with you there. I think that this is one of the only times I would say that I viewed Yetu as being a bit selfish. Because even Ori is like, you've had time to heal, and all you have to do is push yourself over the rock, and then you can come with me. But you're choosing not to because you're scared. Um, and in Yetu's mind, that is Ori leaving her, but then your Ori is like, no, you're choosing to stay. You're leaving me. Um, I think I sided with Ori because really there's nothing keeping Yetu there. I mean, sure, Yetu doesn't want to go back to their tribe, but if you go with Ori, that's a whole new beginning. And why not try something else if your old thing tired you out so much? I yeah.
Hmm. I like the different perspective on it.
Yeah. Yeah. I like that we can both disagree and agree at the same time. I don't just want somebody like, I guess calling back everything I'm saying. And I know you don't want that either, so yeah. What I guess one of the most confusing parts of the book for me was towards the end, when the Wajenru are now trying to live without Yetu and are like floating around with all the memories, and they're all traumatized, and the ocean keeps getting what they call bombed. Were you able to decipher exactly what those bombs were,
um
or like
I
why that's even happening?
I don't think that I caught onto that. I caught on to like the general sense of like turbulence and disarray, but I just assumed it was a result of like them, their connection to the sea and vibrations and all of that stuff, and still dealing with like the absorption of all the memories. I don't think, and maybe I'm just not recalling. It's also been a couple weeks, but I will say I've thought about
Mm.
the book pretty much every day since I finished it, or gone back and listened to little parts here and there.
Hmm.
But I don't that part for whatever reason doesn't stick out to me, and I don't know why. Because that feels pretty significant, but
Yeah, I believe that the bombs are sort of what kind of sparked the Wajinru to want to revolutionize against them and attack the Tulak people, um, which is what gets Basha involved as well. Um, I was curious if the bombs were like a metaphor for pollution, the way in which we as human beings often pollute the ocean, or could it possibly be global warming? Like maybe ice caps are falling into the ocean, and that's what the bomb, so to speak, would be. Um, As I never mentioned, I just was so curious if there's any sort of like real world parable or parallel there.
no, I like the idea of thinking of something like that as pollution, especially for like such a nature based uh,
Hmm.
society.
But then that takes my point. That takes me back to my point earlier. That is, if the two-legged people had some sort of knowledge about underwater creatures or the Wajin in particular, then why are they bombing in quotes, the ocean? Like, do they want to kill them? Then that's what the Wajin would take it as. But I didn't see it as purposeful. I saw it more as like accidental. Did you get a sense of it being purposeful or accidental?
Um, I don't know. It maybe more on the accidental, or just like carelessness,
Yeah.
or just like we, as a society, as like a society very broadly, all people across the world, but are very good at like, just doing what's gonna serve us, especially when it comes to um, like taking advantage of the natural world.
Hmm. There's a part where Yetu says the entire reason they left the Washinru tribe and left the role of the historian was to no longer feel tethered by their tribe. And they originally were upset with Ori because they felt themselves getting tethered to them, and building a connection with them. And that made me think, do you think it's possible for these characters or even us as human beings to live life without connection or tethers or any sort of care for other people?
I think the idea of being tethered to something, especially for Yetu, is really romanticized, and we get that a
Hmm.
lot because they feel that really everyone else is like untethered, and I don't know if that specific word is used, but there are a lot of very similar phrases thrown around when talking about the other Ujenru, and how they can just kind of like float by.
Hmm.
Um, and that maybe like being untethered is something that sorry, I did it again. Something that they're like at some level trying to aspire to, and that's what's driving a lot of what's going on with Yetu in the story.
Hmm.
Um,
I, I get the sense that like there is a sort of like tethering or coupling up in Wajinru culture. I just think that for Yetu, the idea of connection or tethers means something totally different because their connections and tetherings carry a much larger weight than, say, someone with their partner. Like their connections are a lot deeper and a lot more harmful. which is why I think they have that aversion to the idea of being connected or tethered to people.
No, I can agree with that.
But I do believe that once they get to know Ori more and I guess fall in love, I don't think they ever say "I love you" to each other, but we can assume they fell in love. Um, I think that they became a lot more comfortable with the idea of connections because they have seen that all connections are not bad, inherently bad, I should say.
Yeah. And if they're, if we are looking at both of those characters as, um, coded as neurodivergent, then that definitely really falls into that too. That's
Mm-hmm.
I think some of that sometimes is not easily connecting with other people, especially
Mm-hmm.
on things like romance.
Yeah. And that line actually reminded me greatly of a movie. I know, another movie. Sorry, Michael, but a movie called The Whale. Um, it's a film that really plays with the whole concept of like relationships and connections, and like, are they worth it? And even when you want to end a relationship or end a connection with someone, are you capable of no longer caring about that person? Um, and yeah, that whole movie was just like in my mind as I read that part of the book, because I don't know if you're capable of not caring about people. I think we naturally have to care in some way.
I think so too. I think I know for me it wouldn't be possible to.
Yeah. You are also a teacher. I guess it's a good thing for you. That's not possible for you. Um, Another part of the story says that forgetting is not the same thing as healing. Uh, that was another powerful quote to me. Did that stick out to you when you read that?
I don't specifically remember reading it, but the idea
Mm-hmm.
does stick out, especially because it's like the whole, part of this whole ritual that the Wijenru have, and it feels like it is intended to heal in some way, but we obviously see that it's not doing that. Just it feels like it's really just like holding them in stasis or at like a comfortable place and keeping them from being challenged and growing.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah, I agree. I think that Yetu believed that if they left the Wajanru and let the role of the historian, that they could eventually forget, and that would then lead to them healing and moving on. But I think we can all witness while they are away from the Wajanru, all they can think about is the Wajanru. So it's not possible to heal from that connection because you're connected whether you like it or not, I think.
Yeah.
Yeah. What did you think about the ending of the story? The Wajanru attacking the two legs, and I'm assuming some two legs attacking back, and how that ended in so many deaths on both sides. What did you think of that?
Um, I mean, it's not what I wanted to see happen.
Yeah.
I really wanted like more of I won't say like clean ending, but um, I don't know. Or actually, now I think about it, I don't know if there was like a good alternate outcome now that everyone
Mm-hmm.
has their
Mm-hmm.
memories back, or has everyone's memories back of how to handle that conflict between the Wajenru and the people on land. Um, it also makes me wonder a little bit why they're not taking into account as much like their own their own genetics and like being born still of two like people, and that not all of them are going to be those same people that
Mm-hmm.
have, like, caused all of these traumatic things that have created the Wajenru as they are today. But I don't want them to all die.
Yeah, I had the exact same thought. It was just such a sad part of the story to read. Especially, like you said, you have to consider the fact that every two-legged person who was killed in the, I guess, crossfire, were not, excuse me, were not all the perpetrators of their trauma. And we know a lot of the people who died were other African Americans. Um, I guess that's also, it wasn't clear to me if like where they live is predominantly Black people or not, but we do know that Suka and her family is Black, and then so is Ori. Um, and unfortunately, Suka and her family dies. And they seem to be like very good people, but they're like collateral damage in this never-ending war for, I guess, supremacy or power. Um, which I
Do you
guess we can. Go ahead.
do you think the Mojinru could ever win in that situation?
It's tricky because they can't get on land, and I think that will always be the the advantage that the two-legged people have, the fact that they can't get on land. However, while Jinru can control the ocean, they can control the weather, it seemed. I got a sense of that they control the weather, or at least how much it rains and thunders. Um, so I guess they could do something. I don't see Jinru killing all humans, but a great amount of them, yes. I do think they could win that. What do you think?
Um, I don't know. I do see the being able to be on land is a huge advantage, but yeah, depending on the extent of the like weather capabilities, I guess it really doesn't make that much of a difference if you can just flood everyone.
Yeah. Or they have to eventually all go fishing at some point for food. Just take them down while they're fishing. Yeah. But it definitely made me sad to see like innocent lives being lost on both the Wajenru side and the two-legged side. Um, yeah. But I guess I have to commend Rivers Solomon for that, because I feel that oftentimes in stories about like racial tension or like white supremacy, which I think is the overarching theme and like the foundation of this story, um, which is slavery. Um, I think in stories like that, they try to oversimplify racism, almost to being some sort of like magical conversation both sides can have and come to an understanding. And I can appreciate that in this story, Rivers didn't really choose like a diplomatic ending. It's like there's really no good ending. Both sides suffered from the hate, and they didn't offer any sort of magical conversation. Um, did you pick up on that, or do you see that often in stories about racial tension?
I do, and I think I did pick up on the sort of the it's it felt more real that there's no like clear clean outcome.
Hmm.
There
Hmm.
there has to be like some
Yeah.
some loss or discomfort as part of that battle or conversation. Um,
Hmm.
it did make me think a lot about like I won't necessarily say well yeah, we'll say like current just like conversations and ideations around racism,
Hmm.
specifically in America, because that's where I live.
Hmm.
But the way that a lot of these things are approached, or like the media that we get around these sort of conversations, is that is sort of reflecting that there can't be it can't always be as clean as we want it to be, that there has to be some sort of
Hmm.
struggle, or people that feel like they don't want to have their feelings that are going to have them hurt a little bit, or have to like deal with some sort of different realities than maybe they want to.
Yeah, I totally agree with that. I just don't think that, I'm assuming you're agreeing that racism isn't something that can be quickly solved. It's not that simple at all. especially when there's a long-standing history of it. And I can appreciate that the author put that in the story as well. Very cool to see. So I think we can talk about this too. Well, before we finish the story, what did you think of Ori becoming a Wajinru?
I thought that I wouldn't say it was maybe it was one of my favorite parts of the story.
Mm-hmm.
Again, just like I love these like magical storytelling devices, especially in like sort of like this sci-fi fantasy world.
Mm-hmm.
But it also, sort of makes me think like, what do I want to know what the other Wajenru think when they realize that, like they really are that closely connected to two like people, or that two like people can become like them. Or I don't know if it's all of them. Maybe it's just Ori.
Mm-hmm.
But I'm gonna like hope that it's all of them. But it does give some hope that there is some resolution there. It makes me really want another story, and I don't even know if it's possible. Like how that would develop from like a storytelling perspective, but
Mm-hmm.
it makes me want a new story of like Ori's underwater life. Not, please don't call it that. um, like seeing what happens next for all of these pivotal moments in in the Wajenra history. But
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
what did you think about it?
I thought it was so cute, I guess to say the least. Um, I think I noticed that Yetu says that the only reason that Ori didn't drown and was able to become a Washinru is because Ori was invited into the waters as opposed to being thrown in uh, and cast out from her own two-leg people. Uh, so I thought that was sweet, and I could imagine that the other Wajinru, knowing that Yetu invited Ori in, they would warm to her quite quickly. Um, and yeah, I'm definitely curious where the story goes next. Um, I know that both Yetu and Ori talked about the possibility of wanting a family and wanting children, so I'm curious to see how that would work for them. I'm curious. Hmm. Yeah. And you said you did read the afterword. Is that correct? The closing statement?
Yes. At
Okay,
least
cool.
it was in my audiobook. I'm pretty sure that I heard.
That was in mine too. Good. So I do want to talk about that just a little bit. Um, they, David Diggs, the audiobook reader, the person who wrote the afterword, uh, brings up this idea that every iteration of the story, all the way from Drexia's original Afro futuristic album to the clipping song to River Solomon's now novella, have been versions of the classic game Telephone, and how as each person hears the previous story, they will make up their own version and take it further. What did you think of that?
Oh, I do remember this, and I had this made me really think back on the story as a whole,
Mm-hmm.
and sort of like on this role of historian, and again like thinking about like these really strong cultures of like oral storytelling in particular, that and I think he even notes that like this the art of telephone where the message gets changed or misconstrued isn't a weakness, but like the strength and the point of the game.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And that's kind of I don't know if I agree with that as much, but I definitely, or at least not in the sense of like maybe like this historian tradition. I don't know that that maybe is a strength if you get to like pick and choose as much, but that really is like what we're seeing with the Regeneras. It feels like just a really long game of telephone without them all being able to hold on and like relying on one person to
Mm-hmm.
push out what they want, just once a year and then take it back. Or it makes me wonder too, like, do the memories get altered at all, like being processed through people over and over and over and over again?
Hmm. I'm not sure. I don't think it mentions in that. I know in the very end they mention that all the Wajinru decide they're all going to remember everything, but like share the burden of the memories. So it'll become a shared trauma as opposed to individual trauma, which will help them moving forward. But I didn't pick up on how memories may alter, which is very possible that they will alter. But that part, the telephone part, it made me think of our own history, like as people. I like how if stories are not passed down correctly, especially oral stories, because it's so easy for an oral story to be changed just a little bit as the next person tells it, and then so on and so forth, to where eventually it loses its original intention or meaning. Um, I would look at that as being a bad thing, like a bad sign of telephone, not a good version of it. Because naturally, each new iteration of the story, of the history, is going to have the storyteller's own concerns, politics, infatuations, passions, etc. Um, so I guess it's also a notice to look out for what you're listening to, because it may not be fully true. It could just be what that person wants you to believe. You know? Yeah. But I am definitely curious to see where the next person takes this story. If anyone else writes another book or writes a movie, writes more music, I'm curious where they'll take it. I know you and Free have both shared in the Discord server that artists have begun to like make exhibits about the deep. So I'm just curious what will happen next with it. Maybe we will eventually get that. I'm sorry?
Did I see somewhere in one of the other resources that there was like some sort of like play or movie adaptation, or did I make I made maybe I made that up?
I don't remember seeing, let me check. I don't remember seeing anything about a movie or play, but I do know that Free shared there is a walking, moving exhibit in, where is it located? In the Smithsonian, uh, African American Art Museum in DC. I'm sorry, that's where it is. But I don't remember any of us posting about a movie. Maybe one day, fingers crossed. Yeah. And I guess lastly, I'm curious, what did you think about the author's ability to build the Wajinru's world? Do you think it was done well, or they could have improved on a few things?
Uh, I think we were given what we needed to understand, and
Mm-hmm.
there were like
Mm-hmm.
little pieces where we like learned more and more that sort of like helped put things into context.
Mm-hmm.
Um, like the learning about like how they have relationships and like what their sexuality and romance looks like came
Mm-hmm.
pretty late in the story, but
Yeah.
I mean
Yeah.
I think that would have made a difference to understand a little bit earlier, at least like thinking about the other people, but or the other Wojinrio, not people, but there definitely was more that I wanted, but it also the world just felt kind of simple and I
Mm-hmm.
don't want to say blank, but
Yeah.
um, like maybe the world was built with like just enough of what we needed to survive and understand and get by, because that's how the Woodgenro operate on it. Most of them, all of them, except for we have to operate on a daily basis, is just with what they need to survive and get by. And there's not like much more for a lot of them outside of that. So maybe that's why we only get that little bit.
Yeah, I definitely agree. I mean, there wasn't much given to us in terms of like building what the underwater society of Wajinru would look like, but all I did get was just like drab. Everything was like in my mind drab and gray and boring.
I think in my mind they all look pretty much exactly the same.
Yeah.
But I really wonder, like, are they like slightly different colors, or like
Hmm.
some of them like maybe different hues, and they have like different hairstyles. But I didn't imagine them like that at all. And even when I imagined like the mud casing they were in, there was no scenery in anything when I was thinking about what
Hmm.
was happening in the book. It was just like them in cold, dark water most of the time.
Hmm. And then even when it came, since you brought up the physical descriptions of the Wajenru people, when it came to Ori, it's not Ori, when it came to Yetu, she described herself as someone who I guess we as people, because she's not human, would look at as being quite ugly. But no one else responds to her that way. So I'm curious if that was in her mind, her own insecurities, or if like she genuinely is ugly to us as people. Did
Um,
you notice that?
I think that I noticed it, but I did notice the like when they discover her in the pool, the
Mm-hmm.
description is really like a lot more terrifying and gruesome
Mm-hmm.
than I thought it would be, or than what I was imagining up until that point.
Mm-hmm.
Which I don't know why, because I think we got all of those descriptors. I just like
Mm-hmm.
hearing it from other people describing her, describing them,
Mm-hmm.
was quite different than, or a little bit harsher and rougher
Mm-hmm.
than what I had imagined under the water.
Mm. Yeah, I guess another part of it for me is just that like I'm not someone who reads a lot of mermaid stories, so like my concept of mermaids is pretty much just a Little Mermaid and how they all looked. So I guess I imagined the Wajenru to look like that but be black. But from the description, they almost sound a bit more monstrous. Not that that's a bad thing, but it just kind of threw me off a little bit, I think. Yeah. Okay, and that's the end of my notes. Do you have any others you want to discuss? Any plot points you missed, characters, dilemmas, questions?
Um, I don't think I have any others. I will say that generally I really like this one. I think it was my favorite book of what we read so far.
Same, same. I think for a while my favorite was Blue Boy, and then like this one, I think knocked it out of the park a little bit.
Definitely.
Yeah. Well, I'm glad to hear that, Michael. I'm glad that I'm able to choose books that you are enjoying. And that's a perfect segue, thank you, into our books for next month. Um, I know in the past you've mentioned you have an interest in poetry. Is that correct?
That is correct. Yes.
Okay, cool. I do too, but I'm a little apprehensive because so many poetry books are like really short. You're lucky to find one that's like between 80 and like 90 pages max. So I was thinking, I think that's a bit too short for a full month just to have one poetry book that's 90 pages. So I was thinking maybe we can read two poetry books in a month and then meet twice in that month. Is that feasible for you, or do you think that's too much for you to commit to?
That's feasible for me. I like that idea.
Okay, okay. I've chosen ones that are a bit shorter, so like if it's too much, you're totally welcome to just read one and come to one meeting, or up to you. I will send you the links to both of them. Give me just a second so you can read the descriptions. One is called Homie by Danez Smith. They are a non-binary black poet who has had some really good success. So I'm excited to see if we'll like their stories as well. That's the link for them. And the other one is called The Year of Blue Water by Yin Yi, who is an Asian trans poet as well. And I wanted to include them particularly because March is the Trans Day of Visibility. So I would like to have some sort of representation for them too. So just read those and let me know what you think. And if
Okay.
not, I have other poet books too. We can go through the list.
Year of Blue Water. I like the first one.
Mm-hmm.
I like both of these. These sound great.
Good, good. I've sampled them both. I will just say that Homies has a bit more of a comedic tone, but at times, of course, serious. While from my perspective, what I've sampled from The Year of Blue Water, it's incredibly serious. It deals with like the suicide of a loved one, death of a best friend, and then part of that story, a lot of the poems are conversations between the author and their dead loved ones. So I guess just keep that in mind. Does that sound okay to you?
Yeah, that's okay to me.
Okay, cool. So I was thinking that for our two meetings, we could do Sunday, March 17th, for homies, and then we can discuss the Year of Blue Water on Sunday, March 31st. How does that sound to you? Sounds good? Okay,
Yep.
cool. And then same time, 12 p.m.?
Yep, that works for me.
Cool. Okie dokie. Um, I know that the Year of Blue Water in my library, I can't find it, and I've looked at other resources that are on our list, and they don't have it either. So if you have difficulty finding it, let me know. I do have a PDF copy, so I can share it with you if you want. If you have any difficulty finding it, if you don't, then that's fine too. And same goes for Homies. I have a PDF copy of that too, so if you need that, just let me know.
Okay.
Okay, sounds good. And I'll put us down for those meetings for about an hour and a half as usual. I mean, they're poetry books, so we may go way under, we may go a little bit over, we may get carried away. So no time restraint, just, you know. Okay, well, that's all I have to discuss today. Michael, do you have anything?
I don't have anything else. Thank you, as always, for putting all this together. And I really appreciated all of the external resources this month. I know that you mentioned them a lot, but I don't look for them quite as much. Having them in the Discord definitely drove me to do more like background research and check into some of the other things that gave me more to reflect on and think about as I was reading and afterwards. So
Oh, that's
thank
good.
you for that.
I'm so happy to hear
And I
that.
think it inspired other people to do the same too.
Mhm.
So I think from too as well.
Yeah, I'm so happy to hear that. Those are resources that I think are so important for getting people into reading. I know that some people struggle with reading because of maybe their eyesight, or I know that a benefit to audiobooks, they're very beneficial to people who suffer from ADHD. So like those are all great ways to help non-traditional readers read. So I'm glad that you're able to use those as much as I am. And if you ever have any resources of your own, feel free to share too. I'm sure there are plenty out there that I don't know of. So yeah.
I will if I do.
Okay. Well, thank you so much for coming today, Michael.
Yeah.
I had hoped for a bigger meeting, but I'm not sure what happened.
I know it seemed like we had a lot more people that were excited about this.
Yeah.
That's okay.
Yeah, it's okay. They always have the recording, so that's okay. Yeah. Okay. Well, it was great talking to you, Michael, and I will see you on the 17th of March at 12 p.m.
Thanks, Jonathan.
Of course. Bye bye.